I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 69. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode. If you are in the States, then you, just like me, have come off of a holiday weekend, the Thanksgiving weekend, and I hope it was wonderful for you. It was wonderful for our family. My husband's birthday this year fell the day after Thanksgiving, so we went up to Steamboat Springs in the mountains and enjoyed the fresh air, the sunshine. Actually, Thanksgiving Day, it snowed the entire day. It was like this it wasn't aggressive snow. It was just beautifully falling all day long. It was gorgeous. So that was lucky. And then, my husband's birthday was on Friday and we celebrated that and then came back on Saturday. So it was a short trip, but it was great to get out in the sunshine and fresh air. I have to say, I know probably every podcast I'm listening to has mentioned something about this, but it feels wrong to not mention it. So I'm just going to say that as I was reflecting on the things that I was deeply grateful for, you as listeners, you were on that list. It is... I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It is not lost on me that you have a choice on where you lend your ears. You have a choice on your inputs. And I'm very appreciative that we make the cut for you. We work hard to continue to make sure that we're worthy of making the cut. And I just want to say how much I appreciate. I watch the numbers and I watch the stats, and over time, they slowly grow and they slowly build. And I can't thank you enough. I'm just really grateful. This is a huge piece of what we do in Velocity Work in terms of preparation and content. And I'm so grateful that it lands in a way that seems worth it to you to show up. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. A couple of things that I should mention to you one in particular, I am teaching a class this Thursday. So it's December 3rd. If you want to come to join in, it's velocitywork.com/decisions. So head on over there. The class is called How to Make Great Decisions and Always Get a Return on Your Investment. These two things go hand in hand. And when I'm working with attorneys, I notice a lot of the time that the decisions that they're making are not coming from a very intentional place. Sometimes they're coming from a very unconscious place. And it seems like it doesn't matter. But I'm going to lead a class on why conscious decisions are very important, why delaying decisions is a bad move, and how to think about things instead of delaying it or putting off because you're not sure what to do. Then what do you do in that moment? And not just big decisions, not like, should I hire this person or not? Should I buy a building? None of that. Yes, you can apply that to those kinds of decisions as well. But I'm talking about the small decisions. This is where I notice it the most. And if it's happening with the small stuff, it's probably happening with the big stuff. But the small stuff, like, should I block off that hour for X? Should I have a healthy lunch? Should I the really small stuff? But the problem is you will sabotage your success or your progress towards the bigger goals because of the unconscious decisions that you're making that are not actually lining up with the results you want to create. It's the small things, which makes it sneaky. And that's what I want to address with you guys on this call. So I'm going to go over all that stuff because when you have decision fatigue, or when something is bouncing around in your mind and you're not sure what to do, even if it's just an undercurrent, like it's not top of mind, but it's there, it's a decision that needs to be made, you're not sure what to do, and so you let it keep rolling around or you put it off, that sucks energy out of you. That is a delay, or a drain, that's drain on your energy. And you don't notice it because it's not like you get tired from it, although depending on the kind of decision, you might. It's it's very different than that, and it shows up differently than that. And it waters down the results you get everywhere, not just with that one thing that you're trying to decide. So if this at all interests you, come to class, because we're going to talk about some really helpful, useful things that new perspectives that I can offer you that will hopefully help you be a little more decision oriented, like quick action kind of decisions. And it doesn't always mean that they're a yes. Sometimes it's a no, but we'll talk through that and I'll teach you all that. So come to class. I'm super excited. I've done a lot of research and a lot of studying and a lot of super thinking on topics, coming up with the best way to present this to you so that it's digestible and you can walk away and implement what you learn. So I think you guys will enjoy it. So come on over to register for class. That is velocitywork.com/decisions. Okay, on to today's topic. So here's why I decided to do this topic today for you. My team and I worked really hard to finish up everything we needed to finish by last Tuesday afternoon so that we could have all of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. We did have one meeting, a conference call that we needed to attend on Wednesday, but that was it. That's all we had, and it was short. On top of that, for December, we are being very intentional to give ourselves as individuals the space that we would like around the holidays, to give ourselves the space that we would like on our calendar. Now, I always have in the past had great intentions on taking a really full break around the holidays. And I do okay, but I haven't done great with it. But all the work that I've done this year has set me up so that it is not a question in my mind. I'm going to have ample time off at the holidays where I'm not going to have to think about anything. That is a first for me. And it's not even here yet. You guys are probably like, well, you haven't done it yet. But I'm telling you, there is a certainty about it this year that is totally different than I've ever experienced before. I want each of you to listen to today's content through the lens of giving yourself what you want and giving yourself what you need. Because I think we have the best of intentions, but we don't do things or set ourselves up in a way that will give us the result that we intended to get. There's a quote that I've mentioned, I'm sure, on this podcast in the last week or two because I love it so much, by Elizabeth King. She's a sculptor from New York. And her quote is, process saves us from the poverty of our intentions. This, what we're talking about today, is an example of a process that will save you from the poverty of your intentions. So that's why we're going to talk about what we're talking about today. I have talked about similar topics on this podcast before. Many of the things I'm going to say today, I have said before on this podcast, but I'm going to pull it together in a way, seeing as how we are at the threshold of holidays, and you get to decide what that means for you. Now, some of you may be thinking, as you listen to today's topics, it's too late for me. It's too close to the holidays for me to actually implement what Melissa is saying. Okay, I don't know if that's true or not. Only you do, but question that. Really question that for yourself. Don't just fall into the default traps way of thinking. If someone, this sounds ridiculous, but just run with me for a second. If someone had a gun to your head and said, you need to wrap everything up by whatever you desire, right? The story that you're telling yourself isn't possible, whatever that is. If someone had a gun to your head, you'd probably figure it out. And the reason I'm saying that level, to go into that extreme with it, is because it just goes to show that the way that your perception, your perspective of something, just because that's your perspective doesn't mean it's true. So I really want you to question the way that you've got things set up for yourself from here through the end of the year. And is it exactly what you want? And if it isn't, how can you create that, or how can you get as close as possible? So use this podcast to inspire and motivate you to sit down and do the work to figure out what you're going to have to do in order to get what you want in terms of space. And the reason I'm doing this podcast right now is because space is important. If you don't have space and if you don't have periods of rejuvenation, you cannot expect to be the best version of yourself going forward. And if you aren't the best version of yourself, then that means your firm isn't going to be all that it can be, and you're going to cap yourself on results. So just be careful about what you think it means to run all the way through versus what it means in the long run, in the long term, for you to take full space. And I just want to encourage and challenge each one of you to think about this for yourself. So today's topic, we're going to talk about Monday Map and Friday Wrap. This is a process that if you are a member of Mastery Group, this is how we roll. Every week you do this practice. Every week you do this process. Now, some weeks are better than others. This is about progress, not perfection. It's more about the process and showing up for the process than it is than anything else. Because if you show up for the process, it provides a ton of freedom, period. Even if it didn't go exactly how you had planned, it definitely goes better and more smoothly than had you not shown up for the process. This goes back to process saves us from the poverty of our intentions. We all intend to have an extraordinary life. We all intend to get our work done as it should be by Friday afternoon and then close up shop and go home and have a good weekend. But just because that's our intention, if we don't really line up behind it and we don't do what we need to do, which means you follow personal processes, then you should expect that it's probably not going to go as planned. Because if we're left to just our intentions without process, we're going to experience an unideal result, typically. This work is some of the most important work I do with attorneys. Because if you can wrap your head around this and line yourself up very deliberately, very intentionally with a process that will deliver the outcome that you want, man, you're golden. You really are. But instead, we don't take the time, which doesn't take a ton of time, but it does take focus. We don't sit down to focus on and plan out how exactly does this need to look? What processes do I need to put in place? So some of you attended a class that I taught a few weeks ago about personal processes, personal frameworks, I was calling it during the class. I'm going to do a sort of a next level version of that class on the 17th of December. We almost have that ready to go so you can register. Not quite yet, but just keep your ears open for that because this is some of the most important work that you can do for yourself. Today, I'm going to talk about one process that we use called Monday Map and Friday Wrap. This is a personal process that you put into place that will get you way more control over your time and over the results that you create. It is not easy, but it is simple. And I highly encourage each of you to continue to make progress on this until you get it so that it's just second nature. And for the most part, it goes just as you had planned. Okay, here's what Monday Map is. This needs to happen before you start work on Monday. Doesn't matter when you do it. You could do it first thing on Monday morning. You could do it Sunday. Some people choose to do it Friday, actually before they go home. Doesn't matter. I choose to do mine on either Saturday or Sunday, whichever day makes sense for me that weekend to carve out a little space for myself. But so I do mine before I hit the work week, but it's mapping out your week. So we call it Monday Map. And here's what you need to do. Here's the steps. The first thing you do is a detailed brain download of everything that you can think of that needs to get done or that you want to get done. Now, there's going to be all kinds of things that come to your head. And as I've gotten experience with this over time, my advice to you is to have a section for everything to do with work, a section for everything to do with personal life. And the reason that both need to be there is because if you only give thought to all the things you need to do for work, there's things in your personal life that are going to continue to get pushed, or cause a problem because you're going to remember in the middle of the week. So this is about you as a person being able to move through time in a very clear, deliberate, intentional way. And in order to do that, you're going to have to get everything out of your head and onto paper, not just for work, but also for just your life. When you do that, the reason this is so important is to get it out of your head and onto paper is because your brain is meant for processing, not for storage. So when you get it all out of your head and onto paper, then you can play around with it. You can question some of it. You can realize you're missing things. It's going to help you get very, very organized. So get it all out of your head and onto paper. Then once you've done that, there's a couple of things. Number one is I would first go through and everything that you wrote down, which by the way, this takes the longest part of the whole Monday Mat process is this part, is getting everything out of your head and onto paper. But once you do it, then you need to go through and ask yourself, is that really need to be done? Do I choose to do that thing? And as long as you choose to do it, then it gets to stay on your list. There are things that you're going to say, I don't have a choice. I have to do it. And I'm going to encourage every one of you right now to just cut that out because that's not a helpful perspective to say, I have to do all these things. Sure, right? But what's a more useful perspective is to look at your list and say, I choose to do that. I choose to do that. I choose to do that. Even if it's things that, it's something that technically you have to do in order to keep your clients, for example. Okay, well, you're choosing to do it. You could not do that thing, and there will be consequences that I'm assuming you don't really want. So you choose to do it. So the reason it's important is because you can come from a much more empowered place as you are planning out how you're going to spend your time. Instead of feeling like a slave to the work, you realize and you take ownership over, no, I choose to do that because if I didn't do that, that's not going to give me the outcome I want. I actually do want to do that thing because it's going to give me the outcome I want. So just check yourself there. Then, so once you've crossed everything off that you don't choose to do, because there might be some things, right? So you don't choose to do those things. Then I want you to go through and ask yourself, for each thing, what are the obstacles to getting that thing done? Now, what's going to happen is that your brain is going to come up with the barriers, and those are the small to-dos. Those are the things to be taken care of on the way to getting the result that you want. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water. As you can tell, I have a cold. Okay. So once you ask yourself, what are all the obstacles, then all these smaller steps are revealed. Oh, well, I would need to call Susie about X. I would need to schedule this appointment. I would need to whatever it is, right? So all these steps in order to get this thing done that I wrote down on my brain download. So asking yourself the obstacles just reveals all the steps you have to do. And the reason that's important is because all those steps take time. And a lot of times we will put that end result that you wrote down in your brain download initially, you'll put that on your calendar to be done, but you haven't thought through what it's going to take to get that thing done. And so it continues to get put off, or it's put into a spot that's not really reasonable. You didn't give enough time for it to be done. All these things. And actually what's super common and so detrimental to you as the owner of your firm is that you do things because you haven't thought them through. You can't see what you can delegate. It's just all behind this thing, this needs to get done. Well, there's a bunch of to-dos behind that, some of which you don't have to do. You could delegate those. But because you didn't think through it, it's never going to get delegated, which means you're going to be the one to do it, which means you're spending time doing things you shouldn't be doing. You have better things to do. You have higher value, a better and higher use of your time. So to focus on other things. So brain download. Decide each of those things. Do you choose to do this or not? Cross off the things that just don't make the cut. They are not high enough priority. And if everything there, you choose to do it and it's important enough to you to get done soon, then leave it there. And a lot of people freak out when they see this list because it's like, oh my God, there's so much here. It doesn't fit in my calendar. We will talk about that in just a moment. When then you ask yourself, what are the obstacles to getting these things done? And so that you can see the steps that you need to take in order to get that thing completed. So you have this, most of the time it's very messy. You have this download in front of you that's messy, but oh my gosh, these are the keys. This is all of the stuff that you have to do. It's not in your head anymore. It's in front of you. And if you need to get these things done, then you need to plan how all this is going to get done. Now, the last thing that you're going to do with this list before you actually do something with the list is you're going to go next to each item that's written down, and you're going to put the amount of time that each one of those things is going to take. How much time are you going to give yourself to complete that? Sometimes you won't know the answer, that you won't be able to, you're like, I don't know how long that would take. I haven't done that thing before. Just guess, decide like, okay, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to get it done in 45 minutes. If you're wrong, it's not the end of the world. Just do your best as you're going through the list. This is an important step. Don't skip it. It feels like it's probably skippable, but it's not. It's very important. I am going to give you some tips on things that I have learned, and I've tailored my experience with Monday Map in a little bit. But first, I just want to make sure I lay out the steps for you, just the basic steps. So get everything out of your head onto paper. Decide what you're going to like, what makes the cut, what's going to stay on your list because you're choosing to do it. Ask yourself what the obstacles are to getting each thing done. That will tell you what your smaller steps are, the smaller to-dos. Next to each thing, put how much time each of those things is going to take. Then, after you've done all that, now it's time to go to your calendar and schedule everything. I would start with the free time or personal time that you know you need to take for yourself, dinner with your family or doctor's appointments or whatever it is, but free time and personal time I would block out first so that you work around that. Then I would put into your calendar just the basics, meals, meetings, regular occurrences. I would put all that stuff in. That a lot of the time that stuff recurs. So put that in there, the recurring stuff. And then I would carve out time for you to focus and make headway on your business. You can do this 30 minutes a day. You could do this 2 hours a day. It depends on you and your reality and what you want to make possible. But carve out a bit of time that allows you to act as the visionary and the owner and the CEO of your firm. Because it's easy to give all of our time to the in the business work, and on the business work is so important. Even if not hardcore action comes out of each of the time slots that you set for yourself, you carved out space to work on the business. That is a habit that will pay off so hard for your future. So don't skip that. Then the last thing that you're going to schedule is everything else that was on your download. Now, if there's things on your download that were on the business kind of stuff, you can put them in the slots that you set aside that you're going to work on the business. Most of the time, there's going to be so much in the business stuff that was put on your brain download. So that's what you need to allot time for and decide where you're going to put what. The last thing that you're going to do after you put this download in is make sure that there's always overflow time every day for when things don't go perfectly as planned. Your day isn't screwed. You had a little bit of buffer time scheduled so that you can adjust as needed when something will throw you off in the middle of your day for a bit. You know you've got some space that you can still get that thing done later in the day. So the things that are going to go in your calendar are free time and personal time, recurring things, focus time each day for on the business stuff, overflow time on your calendar and for when things don't go perfectly, and everything else that was on your download. That's the last thing I would put in is all the other stuff. This all sounds straightforward, right? And it is. But what won't be straightforward is what your brain will tell you when you go to do this. I mean, I have heard the gamut. And also, by the way, guys, I sit down every week and do this myself. And it took me a while to get into a groove where I didn't have all these thoughts like, this is impossible. It doesn't all fit. I don't know what to do about this. And it would almost create more stress and anxiety because of what was happening in my head than anything else. And here's what I want to say. When you are looking at your brain download and you're looking at your calendar, you are looking at the reality of things. When you don't do this process, then what happens is you have very good intentions about getting all this stuff done that's just swimming in your head. Like you kind of know you got to just crush it, crush the week, go for it. And you barrel through the week doing the best you can. It's almost like you're closing your eyes, and then when Friday hits, you open your eyes and you're like, okay, then it's time to reconcile what didn't get done. The problem with that is that you're very reactive to the world when you go about things that way, which makes you even more inefficient. And the other terrible thing about this is that you get to Friday and you're deflated. You feel defeated by the work because you see that you didn't get it all done. But the truth is, you were never going to get it all done anyway. It wasn't possible. There's too much in your head. It's like magical thinking. There isn't enough minutes that you have to give in order to get all of the stuff done that you think needs to get done. So the question becomes, now what? What do you do with that information? Do you want to keep putting your head in the sand and just, keep on trucking and having that cycle of defeat and cycle of stress and anxiety and just all of it that goes with it, being a reactive law firm owner? Or do you want to just cut the crap and say, all right, this is the list that I say things need to get done. This is how much time I have. Now what? And then make some decisions. So one decision is that you can make is to delegate more. What can you get off of your plate that someone else can do, at least the legwork, and then you can finish up the last 20% of it or something. But how can you make sure that you can fit all of the things that need to get done, that they can get done in the week, maybe not all by you? The other thing is that you decide okay, I didn't cross off much at the beginning of this exercise, but here we go. And you start crossing things off and you really realize that's not that important right now. I need to get to a place where I have more control. And in order to do that, I need to reset expectations for myself on what's possible. The other thing you can do is reset expectations with other people who are waiting for things, and you're feeling all this pressure from that. You can make decisions about who you need to reach out to and reset expectations that they might not get it in the time frame that you originally thought. Now, you get to make this call. That's not the best thing for everybody, but I'll tell you what, a lot of times that will give you space to actually create a realistic timeline for yourself with accomplishing things. And the whole reason you set expectations the way that you did before is because you didn't have this visibility. When you have this visibility, you set expectations differently with people because it's very clear. The writing's on the wall in front of you. You don't have time to do things, urgently. You need to take the reins and take control. And the only way you can take the reins and take control is to actually have visibility and an understanding of reality. That is it. So when you go to calendar all your stuff, it's not all going to fit. I guarantee you it won't all fit. And there will be some realizations and some hard calls that you have to make. But the second that you make them, your life gets better and everybody else is happier too because they're getting things by the time you said you would get them done. They are, it's just a good thing for everybody. It feels impossible. It feels scary. It produces a lot of anxiety at first because you see the bed that you made. You got to go lay in that bed. You see it and for what it is. And it's time for you to shift things into a different way for yourself. That is what Monday Map is all about. Now we're still at the Monday Map part. So where you're sitting down, you're planning all this. So calendar things in a way that's possible, in a way that's doable. Don't cut corners. If you know something's going to take 45 minutes, don't put 30 minutes on your calendar. That doesn't make any sense. You're setting yourself up for that day to be not go well, right? To be frustrating and for yourself to be screwed on what the results you wanted to create that day. No, you didn't do it realistically enough. As a client in the past has said, it's magical thinking. So sit down and calendar accordingly. There's a lot of drama that's going to go with that. work it out, because otherwise you would just be barreling through your week anyway. It's like sticking your head in the sand. So you have an option here. You can either take the reins or you can stick your head in the sand. And that Monday map is really taking the reins. So the last piece of this is that your job that whole week is to honor your plan. And so you can see where it's very important to build in the space that you need to build in order for you to be able to honor the plan. Anticipate your barriers through the week and account for those when you're making your plan. If you don't plan well, you're not going to show up in the ways that you need to show up, because it's impossible and you're going to get thrown off, and then you're going to throw your hands in the air by Wednesday and say, well, that didn't work. You have to anticipate the barriers. You have to anticipate that you're going to get hungry around 12 o'clock. You have to anticipate that you're going to need to leave at 3:20 to go pick up your kid, instead of 3:30 is like your cutoff time, but actually it's 3:20, right? Little things like that. You have to anticipate and do it well and do it right so that you are able to honor your plan. That's the last piece of the Monday map, is going through the week and honoring your plan. Now, the end of the week, there's a process that we teach called Friday Wrap, which is a reflective process when you look back about, how did the week go? What was your top accomplishment? What was your top lesson learned? So that you can process lessons and carry them forward instead of just running into each week again and again and again. You really want to be thoughtful, because that's the learning. That's where the learning happens, which means you can continue to get better and better and better and better. That is Monday Map. Many of the people that I work with on Monday Map, they do pieces of Monday Map, but they don't do the full Monday Map. Some do the full Monday Map and they crush it every week and they learn from their lessons and they continue to get better. Some, they do the brain download, but they don't actually schedule everything. Some, it's essentially their brain download turns into their to-do list. That is not a Monday Map. Some, they schedule some things, but they don't schedule everything. You really doing it fully is a deep practice in and of itself. I'm going to offer to you now some things to think through that I have learned along the way and that I make a part of what I do. And it's almost like I have a magnifying glass on my process and the way I approach this right now, because I do want a lot of space around the holidays this year. And in order to make that happen, there has to be things lined up in order to give me that result. So when I look at the time that I have got to give this month to work, I have to figure out a way to get it all done within that time frame. So this week, for example, when I sat down to do my Monday Map, I got in the weeds with time and how much time I actually have. So every week I have recurring meetings with my team. I have recurring coaching sessions that are on the calendar, or coaching calls. So I have these set hours that I'm not available to work on other things. It is already claimed. That time is already claimed. So when I looked at my week and I had 40 hours to the work week, but this week in particular, 13 of them are already claimed by things that were already set in motion. So now we're down to 27 hours of productive time that I've got to give. So now, okay, good to know. I have 27 hours. Some of that I need for lunch and for, little things, giving myself space to take care of myself throughout the day. So then I add those in. Okay. So now we're down to, let's say, 24 hours. I have 24 hours in the week that I've got to give to get everything done that I wrote on my Monday Map. That sounds like a lot, but there's a lot on my Monday Map. So when I go to start prioritizing and thinking about how I'm going to make this work, I know I've got 24 hours. And, I told you guys to write down the amount of time next to each thing. I add up all of those minutes that I wrote down. And if it comes in under 24 hours, good. We got, this is going to be easy to fit it all in. If it comes out more than 24 hours of work, then I've got some calls to make. I've got to figure out what I want. Then what, right? That's when the question comes in. Then what? So I encourage you to do that for yourself. Get very realistic. You don't always have to do this as you move forward once you really got your groove, but it's so helpful at the beginning just to wake up to what the reality is of the situation and decide when you're going to work and when you're not going to work. And if you have these set number of work hours and then you look at your Monday map and it adds up to more than what you've got to give, then what? That's when you have to make decisions. So for me, I actually get granular with the hours when it's really important for me to stay dialed in and focused, or when it feels like, oh my gosh, there's so much that needs to happen. I don't want to, I just want to know exactly what I'm getting myself into. So that's what I do, is I count the number of hours that I have to give outside of recurring stuff, outside of my meals, outside of the things that just need to happen. And so the remaining goes to the in the business work or the visionary work that I want to do or whatever. Okay, so I add them up and I reconcile it. If the number of hours on the download is less than what I've got to give, we're fine. If the number of hours on the download is more than what I have to give, then we need to make some calls. But once I figure that out, then once I get them so they're about even, it's either 24 hours of work that I'm going to schedule or less, then I can start scheduling. The other way I can go is, and there have been weeks I've decided to do this, if I've got, 32 hours of work that needs to be done and I've only got 24 to give in the week, then maybe I choose to schedule an extra day of work for myself. And that has happened, and it's been so worth it to me. It doesn't happen every week, but sometimes it does. And so, but knowing that ahead of time is so much better. You can plan. If I'm going to spend half of a Saturday getting work done, oh my gosh, then sign me up. And maybe or like a full day of work on Saturday. I would much rather do that and know that I'm going to do that and plan to do that than just try as hard as I can to get through the week, which means I'm going to be more efficient than I could have been because I didn't plan well. So I'm not even going to get as much done in the 24 hours I had to give because I didn't plan it well. There's going to be inefficiencies there. I'll allow myself to get distracted. I don't really have a plan I'm going by. It's just this running list of things to do. And you don't realize the minute here, minute there that gets where your attention gets pulled away, you don't just sink right back into work. So you really lose time. You burn time. So planning it out not only allows me to be more efficient and dialed in with the 24 hours that I've got to give in that week remaining, the 24 hours, but it also lets me see the discrepancy that's there and lets me reconcile it in the way that feels good to me. Sometimes that means I don't get everything done and I know that ahead of time and I reset expectations or I delegate or. And sometimes that means I work extra because I choose to. And it's perfect. Like I know exactly what I'm going to get done and it's going to be very predictable. My outcomes are very predictable that way. So that's my advice, and just in a granular way of thinking about your time and how it all lines up. Now, the other thing I will say is that using this space that you want to create for yourself around the holidays, because it sort of puts this positive pressure on your work, it is the perfect time to practice not only Monday Map, but as you're honoring your plan, actually staying true to your plan and not allowing yourself to get off course. It is a practice. There are things that come up that feel important that aren't important enough to really have the power to pull you off of your plan, but we let them anyway. And I talk a lot about this in my classes. I've talked a lot about this in the podcast. And I encourage you guys, keep showing up for the classes that I'm teaching, because this is the kind of conversation that we can get into with Q&A and things like that. But your job to honor your plan sounds so easy if you make it very realistic in the calendar, but it isn't. Even when you make it very realistic in the calendar, it is a practice and a habit to stay on task based on what you have set. Even if you built in space, even if you did it right, it's still a mental challenge to stay focused. But it's your chance to practice. And December is such an awesome month to practice this because you want more space. And if you really want that, if that's the carrot at the end of your stick, stay the F focused. And that is not easy, but it's a worthwhile practice. It's worthwhile to show up and keep showing up for that. So Monday Map is all about the planning and planning well. And I gave you a tip there on how I think about things and on a bit more of a granular level. And then also really just dialing into and reminding yourself at the top of every day, today, I have a plan that's totally possible. My job is to stay on point, period. Reminding yourself of that every day. And how can you set yourself up to win at that? There are ways you can, and there are things you can do. So, all right, this episode was longer than I anticipated, but I really want to make sure it's clear for everyone. I want to make sure you have the information that you need in order to go knock it out of the park for yourself. It's like my mission to stop having people be a slave to the work and a slave to the calendar and a slave to time and a slave to the consequences of being a reactive human. You have to push the reset button for yourself, and I want to make sure you have all the tools you need to do that. Okay, everyone. I hope to see you in class this Thursday for Make Great Decisions and Always Get a Return on Your Investment. And I hope to see you in class on the 17th, which you'll get more information about coming up ahead. Have a good week, everyone. Happy December. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.